Hi there, Demonic here. Welcome to the tutorial for Eddie, a Taskforce Elite custom map editor based on Unreal Engine 4. In this tutorial, I'll be covering how to create a cave or a tunnel subject. So to get started, we're going to jump into the preparation for our tunnel. We're going to be using Desert Valley map as an example. And the first things we'll do is use the landscape sculpting tools to carve out the entrance to the cave. Now here I'm using the Sculpt Landscape tool and the Flatten tool, using left click and shift left clicks to modify the landscape. Once we're done with our landscape preparation, we're going to drag in one of the provided assets for a cave entrance in Eddie. I recommend to use the Grid Snapping tool. By clicking the grid icon that's located in the top right of the viewport of the editor, select a good size for the grid to snap to. In our case, we're using 10 units. And later I will explain in more detail about why this is such a powerful feature to use. Now a couple of key points to make here is that the back of the asset has what we call back faces. What that means is that the geometry is see-through, and if the player were to walk on top of it, the player will fall through it until a solid surface is reached. What this essentially means is that a level designer, you guys need to make sure that any back faces are blocked by solid geometry in the level. Once we have the entrance in place, we're going to be using the Visibility Landscape tool and scale the brush size down to around 120 units. And then next, we're going to be left clicking gently on the landscape. Keep in mind that the steeper it is, the more abnormal the cut will be. In our case, we have a bit more extreme gap that cuts above the entrance, in which case we'll need to block that off with rocks or any other fitting asset. Now that we've done that, we're going to hide the landscape using the H key, and we're going to duplicate our entrance. While in the same spot as the entrance, we're dragging another static mesh type into the DL panel of our entrance. By doing that, we effectively retain the position of our previous asset while changing the static mesh type. This is a quick and easy workflow for using any modular assets, by the way. As mentioned earlier about grid snapping, now we'll be making the most use out of it. We're going to be snapping the tunnel assets together as the design with in mind. They've got nicely placed origin points that allow us to snap them into place using the automatic grid snapping tool. Sometimes they may be offset, but don't worry, they will still snap into place. Do make sure, however, to have your transfer location in the deals panel have no decimal point, as it might snap incorrectly if two locations have different positions after the decimal point. I'm then repeating the same process as before, using the different assets available in this folder. As you can see, there is a merged asset in one of my folders. That is a custom asset for the underground zone opening, created in Blender. You may have noticed that these assets are quite limiting in terms of directional progression. This is why I'm providing with an extra example where we just use the walls to create an entrance to a tunnel. So this is where creativity is your limit, repeating the same workflow and process as before. During the creation of this time-lapse, I realized that it would be the best to share with you a pro tip on using world coordinate systems versus local coordinates, and you can toggle between those two modes the same way as with grid snapping on the bar next to it in the form of a globe icon. And knowing the use of this feature will speed up your workflow when creating elevated designs. Here you can see me using it for both the walls and the floor. So the last thing I'm going to cover is how to do basic underground lighting setup. As you may have noticed, by default the tunnels are unrealistically bright. To fix this, we're going to use a sphere reflection capture that you can drag in from the Place Actors tab. A sphere reflection capture allows you to either increase or decrease the amount of light reflection that happens on the affected materials. In our case, we're going to be lowering the brightness down to 0.5 units, and this will darken the room and provide more contrast. We can combine this with changing the ambient light interior darkness. We can access the settings in our level by searching for a skylight actor in the world outliner. Within the details panel of the skylight, we can then find the lower hemisphere and simply turn it on. Very important thing to note is that this affects every interior on the level, so be wary of overusing this effect. It's better to have slightly brighter lower hemisphere and to use the sphere reflection captures that decrease the amount of light reflections instead. To finish off, I'm going to leave you with this little speed lapse. We'll continue to respond to your questions about Eddie and help you by creating these tutorials. Thank you very much for watching.